Episode 3 The Boxing Stance and Footwork. The energy from a boxer's punch is generated starting from the ground up as the boxer pushes off the earth to start the punch and finishes off by releasing that generated force through the end of his fist. And as Einstein said, for every action there is an opposite and equal reaction which will result in pain to your opponent. Similarly, we must train a boxer from the ground up, as boxing is a game of balance, as the objective of the game is to knock your opponent off their feet with punches to the opponent's torso and face until they are no longer able to continue. So the first thing a fighter has to know is how to maintain balance on the toes and balls of their feet. Much like a ballerina and ballroom dancers, a boxer needs to know how to move on their toes, so the most famous and fundamental exercise to train is skipping. Skipping not only trains the aerobic cardiovascular system, but helps train your body as one structure to balance and bounce your toes. This is invaluable in the boxing ring, as if you can move around on your toes as opposed to being flat-footed, you can move around the ring from position to position in a much more efficient and speedy manner. Like with everything, it takes practice, so you skip to train your body to bounce, so eventually you can glide or bounce around the ring to attack or defend, so your feet give you the advantage. Imagine the advantage a mobile tank would have over a stationary cannon if they were to do battle. Every now and again, as a young child, I would teach him how to hold his toes like a fist, make the 5 individual toes feel like one individual horse-like hoof, and learn to bounce and move on their toes and float around like butterflies. This is an advanced technique, so will take time and repetitive practice. But initially he must understand these concepts first before we can start drilling him. Furthermore, the greatest boxers in history knew how to dance. That is, the greatest Muhammad Ali learned to dance on his toes like a ballerina, and the greatest pound-for-pound boxer Sugar Ray Robertson was also a professional tap dancer. And dancers are musicians, in which their feet are the musical instruments that can be translated into a musical rhythm. The rabbit hole goes extremely deep. One must ponder on this deeply. We have absolutely no time to waste, so I must train the boy systematically and scientifically, and cannot just follow the general consensus. The first thing a lot of people learn is the so-called most important punch in boxing, the jab. They say this is the most important punch in boxing as it is the most utilized. The jab is the rangefinder. The jab can be the decoy. The jab can be the smoke screen. The jab can act like a hypnotist, can lull you into a habit and trick you to cover the real attack coming behind it. Yes, the jab is extremely important weapon, but it doesn't mean it is the first thing that should be taught. As before you can teach the jab, you need to teach the boxer to stand in a position to first of all throw the jab. Moreover, the boxer has to learn to stand in the correct structure to fight. So the boxer needs to be in a position in which they are always on balance. As all combat sports are effectively a game of balance. In boxing, the name of the game is to knock someone off their feet with your punches. In judo, the objective of the game is to throw someone off their feet and put them on their back. In sumo, the objective of the game is to wrestle someone off their feet or wrestle them off and throw them off the dohyo. In kickboxing, the objective is to knock someone off their feet or knock them out with your kicks and punches. So effectively, all standing combat sports are a game of balance. So the boxer has to stand in position with their knees slightly bent and ready to move in whichever direction required. So, the famous horse stance is a good guideline in the shape the leg should be. I have asked him to watch videos on YouTube and mimic the great footwork of fighters like Pacquiao, Usyk, Lomachenko. I even referred to the Bruce Lee vs Chuck Norris fight in The Way of the Dragon and informed your legs have to always be in their fight stance and always cocked and loaded, ready to pull the trigger when required. Footwork is one part of the boxing stance, yes, but the other half, the upper half, where all the attacks are aimed at, this is critical in boxing as well. The fists and forearms, these are the pillars of defense. So your elbows to your fists, these are the pillars which can be used to block punches that are coming at you. It is not easy to keep the hands up at eye level during the duration of a fight, let alone move around the ring with them up. But these are the pillars of your defense. So you must train your arms and your shoulder muscles so they are strong enough to have the endurance to stay up. But many fighters have learned to adapt and bypass this a little by having the hands down. This is an advanced technique which should not be encouraged to use until you have gained a certain level of experience. Even boxers like the great Roy Jones Jr. and Muhammad Ali were taught to keep their hands up when they first started. So I must teach him to fight initially with his hands up until he is good enough to change his style. So initially, all we want him to do is get used to moving around the ring in a boxing fight stance and just steadily work basic movements and then move on to more advanced movements as time progresses. So, to get comfortable just moving around the ring, we practice a drill for a couple of rounds, just to which he would simply move around me with his footwork. No need to do anything flash, but just get him used to moving around an enclosed space so he can get a feel for the battleground. As fighting in the middle of the ring is totally different to fighting with your back on the ropes, or even better, fighting with your opponent with his back on the ropes. Before we can teach the boy how to punch, he needs to know how to control his fighting machine. So the first thing is to build your fighting machine. So he must be in the so-called fighting stance. So the fighting stance has to be ingrained and drilled into the muscle. So the drill to do this is to get him to move around the ring first. We will start with footwork from outside range fighting, and later we'll progress to footwork for inside range fighting, as these are totally two different styles of footwork. Boxing is a science, as they say. Yes, but it is not rocket science. As we are easing into this, we can't learn everything in one go. As with everything, there is a progression. So the drill today is to get him used to moving around the ring in his boxing stance and learn to bounce around the ring, as it is the most efficient way to travel around the ring. Stepping 1 foot at a time to move around the ring is for mums and dads who do boxercise. We do not have time for him to go through white belt activities. As a judoka, he is a very agile athlete already. The boy wants to cross over to MMA after he gets a boxing world title and do what no one has ever done, cross over from boxing to MMA and not the other way around, as that is all that has happened thus far. Reason being, in order to fight in MMA, you must be able to fight with every part of your body, and moreover, you must be able to fight at any range. That means being able to kick, wrestle, grapple. They're mandatory skills to have if you wish to be competitive. The boy has been a national level judoka since he was 9 and hence already knows how to wrestle and grapple, so his dream is plausible. I thought I was ambitious, having my first amateur boxing match at the age of 28 without my family knowing, as they were against it. But the boy is a chip off the old block, times 10, as I thought I had a lot of energy when I was young, but he has energy I cannot comprehend. But he needs to be able to enhance this energy. Like a magnifying glass, when they focus the energy into one point, I must try to focus all his energy to one point. Thus far, we have not been able to contain his energy. But now, this is his life. So we must focus. What other choice do we have? In MMA, fights start standing up and can end up going to the ground, but it always starts on the feet. In boxing, the fight always starts at a distance, so it is logical to practice distance fighting footwork first. So, after a couple rounds of moving around the ring in the new boxing stance, we worked on just evading some simple 1-3 attacks with solely his footwork. A lot of boxers are taught to get in the boxing stance and then move around the ring stepping 1 foot at a time. That is an extremely beginner level, like a non-athletic person. But the boy has been practicing judo since he was 5 years old, and judokas, like wrestlers and gymnasts, are extremely athletic and strong. So, to teach him to move around the ring 1 step at a time would be like going backwards for him. The boy has bounce in his legs due to his youth, so we must utilize this bounce and youth, as the youth factor in boxing is like a magic power that leaves you once you get old. And this is why I must have the utmost respect for Manny Pacquiao and why he is in the GOAT argument, as he is still getting in the square ring and doing battle with not just melons for a payday. No, he goes in there with boxers at a world championship level in the new era. So Manny Pacquiao, I salute you. The great Manny Pacquiao, living legend, Hall of Famer. In boxing, your back foot should never be flat-footed, as it always must be sprung, locked and loaded. When you are in close, the front foot may be flat to act as an anchor, but the back foot should always be sprung and heeled up, so one can pivot and maneuver as required. Either way, we must learn footwork at a distance first, as all boxing fights start from a distance. The aim of the game today is to get him familiar with moving around the ring in his boxing stance and start to evade the most commonly used punches, that is, the jab, right, left hook, otherwise commonly referred to as the 1, 2, 3. If we can establish that, then we will at least have a small understanding of the kind of attacks he may face in the ring. As it is literally his first day of boxing, the main emphasis is to relax his body to mold into the boxing fight stance and just start getting used to moving in that structure. Just like a sumo wrestler has to learn to fight with their legs firmly grounded towards the earth, a boxer needs to learn to move their machine around the ring with that consistent distance between their feet so that they are always on balance. Just like in Rocky 1, where Mickey was teaching Rocky about footwork and tied the shoelace around his ankles and instructed to keep it taut so that he maintains a consistent distance between his legs, which ensures that he'll always be on balance. This takes practice. As rudimentary it may look, we must slowly repeat the motions in which we want him to move in the ring. By practicing watching lots of punches come at him, it will register in his mental experience so that eventually, after seeing hundreds and thousands of jabs and rights coming to him, he will hopefully be able to predict the signals for when they come. So initially it is drilling to a rhythm, as that repetitive movement to a rhythm will help hypnotize it into his muscle memory of the machine. So leading up to the first spar in a few months, we want to commit rounds of work to it. As much as anyone would love to progress to advanced techniques as soon as possible, in any martial arts there is a progression, and skipping any steps in the progression will just come back and bite you in the back sometime in the future. It may not come back straight away, but like a boomerang, it will come back. The movements initially do not have to be fast or sophisticated. They just have to learn the simple motions first. Then, as time progresses, we can increase the speed of the attack along the line of progression. So each training session will commit rounds to working his footwork to maneuver him around the square ring. We must drill this into his mind, body, and spirit, so that in the heat of battle, these movements will come out naturally and smoothly. As thinking in a fight based on milliseconds can get your lights turned off. It is too slow to think in a fight. As the great Bruce Lee said, you must feel. One must ponder on this deeply. Drilling is the name of the game. The boy doesn't need to know how to dodge or predict punches at this stage. We just want him to get used to moving around the ring smoothly like a boxer, and also start getting slowly used to watching punches come at him. Although these are pre-planned movements and drills, these drills are what will get him to move in that way in the ring. So when the time comes, he will do it instinctively, as it is too slow to think in a fight. One must ponder on this deeply.